I want to talk about the importance of honesty and trust for a minute. My family likes to play the game called Secret Hitler. It's not a very pleasing name to some. It's a board game that I think you can buy online. We borrowed it from a family member, where it's very much like the classical game called Mafia, also not a very pleasant name, where some of the players are secretly determined to be members of the mafia, or in this case with Secret Hitler, members of, they call them the fascists, which I think a better, more historically accurate name would be the National Socialists or the Nazi Party. And I guess they wanted to avoid the name Nazis, but still, fascists isn't entirely accurate historically. But in this game, some of the players are secretly determined to be fascists, Nazis. And one of those is Hitler. The rest of the players are said to be liberals. Again, not a very historically accurate name. It would be Democrats, Republicans, liberals. It would be people who are for a democratic Republican society and for a free state governed by elected officials. The classical liberal term. So the good guys called liberals for this game. The bad guys called fascists for this game. And as a liberal, you don't know who's on your side. The fascists are given, well, everybody's given a card at the beginning of the game to tell them whether they're a liberal or a fascist. They don't show that card to anybody. The fascists are allowed at one point early in the game to open their eyes while everybody else's eyes are closed. And so the fascists can identify each other and they know that they're on the same team. And their goal is to make Hitler the leader, or their goal is to pass enough fascist laws so that they gain control of the government and enslave the rest of the people. Meanwhile, the liberals' goal is to pass enough liberal laws to maintain the freedom of the people and or to execute Hitler when that power becomes available to the government. If they're able to identify which person Hitler is, if they can execute him, then they win. That's the board game. It's a little bit fun. It's very intense. And what happens with this game is you can't trust anybody. You can't trust a word that's said at all. If somebody says, I'm a liberal or I'm a fascist, they could be lying. If somebody says, well, I attempted to pass a liberal law for the freedom of the people, but I was thwarted by so-and-so across the table who passed a fascist law when I tried to pass a liberal law, you can't trust that they're telling the truth. The other person comes back and says, no, they tried to actually pass fascist laws. They were giving me only fascist laws as an option. I had to play a fascist law, and you can't trust them. You can't trust anything that anybody says. What I learned from playing this game with my family is that when you assume, when there's a rule given, that some people at the table are part of a secret conspiracy that is attempting to destroy the government, when you believe, as is the case with this game, that there are people at the table who have made who have made an oath or taken part in a secret group whose purpose is to destroy you, you now can't trust anyone. You can't trust your neighbor, you can't trust your friend, you can't trust your parents, you can't trust your children. They all could be a part of that group, especially when you're playing a board game and you're playing it against your in-laws and your brothers and sisters or your children. They could be a part of the evil group in the board game. And in real life, this lesson translates. When you believe that there are people around you, people in the government, people among your neighbors who are a part of a secret conspiracy organization whose sworn goal is to overthrow the democratically elected government, or whose sworn goal is to destroy you and your lifestyle, when you believe that's the case, you now can't trust anyone. The other day, I was reading about a mass murderer who was caught and tried and convicted for dozens of murders, I believe in California. I forget the exact details right now. Dozens of murders back in the early 90s, and they've just recently been convicted. And the jury deliberated for fewer than 3 hours, two hours and something. And when asked, one of the jurors said, you know, it was easy because the DNA, that gentleman's DNA was found at all the crime scenes, and DNA doesn't lie, he said. And it occurred to me that, well, what does this gentleman on the jury know about DNA at all? He's not likely a scientist himself. He didn't see the DNA or examine it. There were witnesses, expert witnesses at the court, who claimed to him that DNA was found at each of the crime scenes and that the DNA matched the defendant. And so when he says DNA doesn't lie, that may be true, but the expert witness might have lied. The attorneys may be lying. The fact that the police may be lying, that they found any evidence or DNA samples or whatever at the crime. There could be many people lying all the way up. Of course, if you believe that there are people lying in the government, then you're willing to believe that the entire system is filled with thousands of people who are trying to take down the democratic process or the democratic election. You may believe that there are people lying about whether or not there was evidence of a plane at the wreckage of the ruins of the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers in New York City, or evidence of a plane at the Pentagon. You may believe, when you think that people in society are lying to you and that they have formed a conspiracy club in order to take down your way of life, you may believe that thousands and millions of people are lying to you about the evidence, whether or not the world is round or flat. How can you trust the media at all when you believe that thousands of people around you are lying or are against you or trying to take down your government? How can you trust your partner, your spouse, your best friend, your siblings? It's like the movie Truman Show, when the character Truman has been raised his entire life inside a bubble and everybody around him are just actors and the whole thing is there for him. All of them are part of the conspiracy, and Truman has started to catch on. He says, I sometimes I feel like everybody's just doing this for me. They're all in on it. It's just one big conspiracy. And his best friend, sitting there drinking a beer, looks at him and says, Truman, if everybody is in on it, then I'd have to be in on it too. And he's trying to testify to Truman that he's not, when we all know, watching, that actually he is, and he's lying. And so this game has taught me that when you live in this world where people in your mind are part of a massive conspiracy to take down your way of life and your government and to destroy you, there's no one you can trust. You can't trust the courts. You can't trust the elected officials, the politicians. Of course, you can't trust the media. You can't trust the customers who come into your business, that they're actually going to pay you. You can't trust and extend credit to anybody because they're not going to pay you back. You can't trust the banks who are loaning money, and you can't trust the businesses that you walk into, and you can't trust your parents and your siblings. And the whole of society collapses when we can't trust each other. It devolves into anarchy. We can't trust the election system, and so we can't elect leaders. And you can't trust the leader that you've installed in a democratic or non-democratic way. Everybody's lying to you. That's not a way to live. So how do we get past this? And I admit that once you've decided that these are the rules of the game, it's very hard. All that I can do here with my little YouTube platform is to encourage anybody who's watching this to be honest, to be trustworthy, and to find those who are honest and trustworthy around you, and to call out vociferously, loudly, anyone that you know to be a liar, and to expose those lies. If you're chosen politician lies to you, stop trusting them. If your chosen media source lies to you, stop trusting them. If your parents and siblings and children lie to you, stop trusting them and encourage them to live a life of honesty. Now, my own parents taught honesty in a unique way. I've heard people discuss how their parents taught them honesty, how perhaps when they walked into a store one day and they pocketed some candy bar and walked out, that their parents took them back and had them tell the store owner that they shoplifted this item and made them pay for it. And that taught them some honesty. Or in some other case, maybe when they lied, they were grounded or whatever. Most people get punished for dishonesty. Actually, they're typically punished for the action that they committed, not for the dishonesty about that action. That dishonesty just typically follows. When you do something you know to be wrong, you tend to be dishonest about it. In my own religion, there's the idea that Lucifer, Satan, the devil, is the father of all lies. And one of the biggest ways that he encourages us to lie is when we've done something that we know we shouldn't do. And he says, quick, hide. Don't tell anyone. You can keep this to yourself and no one has to know. And if no one knows, then you'll get away with it. And this is one of the major temptations that we have, is that when we've done something we know to be wrong, we keep it a secret, we keep it to ourselves, or we lie about it and nobody ever has to know. And this causes this great lack of trust, and it destroys the economy, and it destroys all of society when we have this lack of trust. My parents taught us that every action, especially every inappropriate or poor choice that we make, has two parts to it. There's the actual poor choice. Say you played baseball in the house and you broke the lamp, the vase, or whatever, and you knocked it over and it broke. Or you played baseball outside and you broke a window. And that is a negative thing. And then you could hide and you could lie about it. And you could say it was the dog. You could say it was the neighbor, he hit the ball. Or you could say, I know nothing about it. I don't know how that vase fell over. Those are all lies. And so the second part of the action is what you say about it. There's that you actually did something wrong. And the second part is that you either lied or told the truth about it. And my parents would insist that telling the truth always gets a hug. In my family, especially when it was hard, if you came and you told the truth and said, I did this, you got a hug. Not because you did that bad thing, but because you were honest about it. And that is how my parents taught honesty. And then we would resolve what the consequence might be for the bad thing that you did, how to make that better, how to make it right. Taking the shoplifted candy bar back to the store, for example, and paying for it, or going to the neighbor's house and paying for the broken window or the scratched car that you rode past with your bicycle and you scratched the car. First, you need to be honest about what you did and take responsibility for it, and you get a hug for being honest. Now, if you were dishonest and you lied about it, in my family, you got a spank. And then you got a second spank or a second consequence for the negative thing. So it was always better to be honest, because the consequence of the bad thing that you did was going to follow either way. But then there was a secondary consequence for lying and a good consequence for telling the truth, that hug. I learned and have learned over the course of my life, watching my friends and in my own family, that it isn't usually the bad action that destroys personal relationships between friends, between lovers, in families. It's usually the dishonesty, the lack of trust. If, for example, you have a problem with gambling, with pornography, with drugs, and you hide it, as again, Lucifer, Satan says, quick, hide. Nobody will love you if they knew that you had this pornography problem or this gambling problem or this addiction. So you need to hide it so that people will still love you. You're worthless if you tell anyone. These are all lies that Satan whispers to us. You are nothing and you need to hide. And so if you do that, the problem gets bigger. And if you actually come forward to those that you love, your parents, to your spouse, from the very beginning, and you say, I'm having this problem. I've made this mistake. I cheated on you. I gambled away thousands of dollars. if you're honest about it up front, yes, they're going to be disappointed. Yes, it's going to be hard for them. It may hurt them. They may not know how to react. But the honesty itself goes a long way to healing the problem that if you were dishonest about it and kept it hidden, would not be there. If a few years later, your spouse, your parents, your siblings, or whoever, your best friend, finds out that you've been lying to them, that you've been hiding from them, finds out that you've been cheating on them all along, that you've been gambling all along, and they discover this themselves. And especially if they come to you and they ask you, are you doing this? Are you cheating on me? Are you viewing pornography? I've seen your history on your computer, or I've seen the money disappearing. Where's it all going? And they ask you to be honest, and then you choose to lie. I mean, you've already been hiding it from them, and now you're lying to them. You didn't come forward and tell them by yourself originally. And in all of this, you've created a persona, something they've thought that you were an upstanding, honest, trustworthy person. And they thought that you didn't have these kinds of problems. But now they simply discover that you have them. You didn't tell them. And now you're even lying to them. And they know you have these problems. That is potentially an insurmountable thing. And the relationship will be destroyed. Not because you gambled or had a pornography addiction or had some other drug addiction or whatever, not because of your problems, but because of your dishonesty, because they no longer know you. They can't trust you. They can't work it out. They don't know how to know if you're actually getting better. Even if you said, I'll fix it, I'll never do it again, I'm so sorry. How can they trust you? How can they know that you've changed your ways? Because they just can't anymore. The trust is gone, and so the relationship goes with it. And it's not because of your poor choices. We all make poor choices. We all, in various ways, self-medicate. We all don't think enough of ourselves. We all have problems, and so we try to make ourselves feel better in ways that we probably shouldn't. We do stupid things that hurt other people or hurt ourselves. And if we hide those things, we make the problem worse. We need to get the help we need, but also we need to be honest about who we are. And so when we instead come to our spouse, our parents, or whoever else, and we're completely open and honest, again, yes, it may hurt them. Yes, they may be disappointed. But typically, when we come and we say, I have this problem, will you help me? They're more than happy to help. Typically, these people love us, and they will be grateful that we were honest and that we express who we are, and they will support us in our struggles. And what's more important, they will know they can trust us. When they ask us, how are you doing with this? How can I help? Are you getting better? Are you taking these actions? Do you when they ask us to be accountable to them, they can trust that we're actually being honest with them because we were honest before. Honesty will save the marriage. Honesty about our infidelity, about our pornography problem, about our drug addiction. Honesty always will get us through the problem and save the relationship. And it will save the relationship in a democracy, the relationship between politicians and people, between the media and people. Honesty will save us. Even when being honest means you admit that I've made a grave mistake, a huge error. If politicians would be honest about their errors, then we could support them. We could trust them. We could know that they would always be honest with us. And if the media would always be honest with us, even when they make a mistake, if they would come back and say we were wrong, then we could know that we could trust them and society would move forward. Honesty, our entire system, our economy, our democratic system, our way of life, peace itself hangs in the balance and hangs on honesty and trustworthiness. And when that's gone, and when we can't trust our neighbors, and when we can't trust our politicians, and we can't trust our media, what's left is anarchy and war and hatred and the inability to trust. Marriages are destroyed, friendships are destroyed, families are destroyed, countries are destroyed when the honesty goes away, especially when we give power to dishonest people in our lives, when we allow dishonest media to persuade us. And we know that they're regularly dishonest. Don't listen to them if they're regularly dishonest, because they're probably being dishonest with you when you're listening to them. And when a politician you know to be dishonest is talking to you, don't listen to them. Don't give them more power. Vote them out. Call them out. Push them aside. Seek for honest people to lead you. Seek for honest sources of information. Seek truth. Truth is another name for God in my religion. Jesus says, I am the truth. All truth comes from God. All truth testifies of God, and God can only speak the truth. And Satan, again, is the father of lies. So when you're looking for what to believe and what not, don't follow and trust sources that lie to you. Now, I've made many mistakes in my life, and I have my own problems and struggles and addictions. I've talked with my wife and with my kids and with those who are close to me about all those things, and I'm open about them. I encourage you to be as well. Be honest, be truthful, be trustworthy. As the Boy Scouts, who have had mega problems of their own now, and that entire organization is imploding because of dishonesty, because of the cover-ups, because of the hiding of all of the problems within that organization. And yet the Scout law still holds true. A Scout is trustworthy. That's the first word, trustworthy. I encourage us all to be trustworthy and to follow people who are trustworthy and to shun people and organizations that lie to you. Those are leading you the wrong way. Back to the game of Secret Hitler. When you believe that there are conspiracies around you, you can't trust anyone. That's a horrible place to be in. It means that all of life is, there's no one that you can trust. I don't personally believe that there are massive, vast conspiracies requiring hundreds and thousands of people who have sworn allegiance to destroy the Republic or whatever. I think that in the past, yes, Nazis and those hiding them were that kind of a conspiracy, and they overtook the government and they killed all of the people who opposed them. Joseph Stalin, when he came to power, killed all of the people who opposed him. And Mussolini and all of such dictators, when they come to power, they completely destroy the press and the media and the people who oppose them, and they kill all the leaders of opposing parties who oppose them. That is not acceptable. That cannot be allowed. We cannot have a position of thinking that anybody who disagrees with me should be put to death or should be kicked out of the country or should be deported or whatever. That is not acceptable. We live in a society of millions of people with millions of varying ideas and beliefs all across the political spectrum, and that's totally okay. We need to realize that our ideas and beliefs are not the right and the one and only right way. We need to listen to other people, accept other people, believe that other people are trying to do their very best to simply provide for their family, protect their family and their children, raise their children in a peaceful society. Most people have that goal. I think it's okay to live in a world not where we believe that there are thousands of people involved in a conspiracy trying to take down the government and our way of life, but instead to live in a world where we see that everybody around me, all of my neighbors seem to be very nice people. Everybody I've met at church and like I say, in my neighborhood and at work, they're all good people just trying to do their best to do the same things I'm trying to do for my wife and my family. And all the people I've met when I've traveled to Ukraine and to Dominican Republic and to Iceland and to Japan and to South America, Chile, Argentina, and all the other countries, whenever I've run into people, they love sports, they love their children, and they're just trying to provide for their families. And everybody I've ever met have been wonderful people. So I believe that I live in a world where basically everybody is trying to accomplish the same thing. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to assume that they're all part of some conspiracy just because they have different set of beliefs than I do, just because they have different values and they think differently about the world than I do. That doesn't make them evil and like they're trying to destroy me and my set of beliefs. They're just trying to do what they believe to be right. I'm going to give them that benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to listen to them and say, maybe they've got a point. Maybe they've thought of something I haven't considered. Maybe they live in a different set of circumstances. And maybe I have been raised one way and taught one thing by my religion and by my parents, and they were raised a different way and taught a different thing by their religion and their parents. And so we disagree, but we have the same basic goal to make a peaceful, loving society. That's all the people I've ever met have been the same like that. And so I should assume that the people I haven't met are probably the same way. Why would I assume that, well, I've just gotten lucky and everybody I've met has been wonderful, great people, but all the people I haven't met, they're all evil and conspirators. That's not the way it is. What a sad world it is to assume that there's a massive conspiracy trying to take down your way of life. I invite you instead to be honest, be upstanding and trustworthy. Always reject those sources, leaders, media, and anything else that you know to be dishonest. If you catch them in a lie, and check. Please don't just assume that the people that you do trust are always telling you the truth. Listen and see. And if the politicians and media and family members and friends that you believe to be trustworthy show evidence that they are not, it's time to stop trusting them. You can love them, but it's time to stop trusting them and don't get your information from that source anymore. And don't elect them to offices of power. Don't give them more power in your life if they are not trustworthy. And number 3, go ahead and believe that in general, people are trying to create a better world, and give them the benefit of the doubt. Listen to them and their ideas. Compromise. Realize that you don't have the only right answer. If you have any questions, or you want to make a comment, or you want to have a discussion with me on my channel, please let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe, please like, please share. And I hope that we'll be able to be honest and trustworthy and trust each other.